The Help deals with racial tensions and prejudices during the eve of the civil rights movement. But is this movie just another presentation of stereotyped characters, or does it portray genuine human emotion? Find out next on Movieology. Set in Mississippi during the 1960s, Skeeter is a Southern society girl who returns from college determined to become a writer, but turns her friends' lives and the Mississippi town upside down when she decides to interview the black women who have spent their lives taking care of prominent Southern families. Abilene, Skeeter's best friend's housekeeper, is the first to open up, to the dismay of her friends in the tight-knit black community. Despite Skeeter's lifelong friendships hanging in the balance, she and Abilene continue their collaboration, and soon more women come forward to tell their stories. And as it turns out, they had a lot to say. Along the way, unlikely friendships are forged and a new sisterhood emerges, but not before everyone in town has a thing or two to say themselves when they become unwittingly and unwillingly caught up in the changing times. The Help stars Emma Stone, Viola Davis, Bryce Dallas Howard, Octavia Spencer, and Jessica Chastain. It was directed by Tate Taylor. Welcome to Movieology, your ticket to engaging the spectacular world of film from the bedrock of biblical truth. I'm Stuart Adams. Please do us a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast, like our Facebook page, and follow our Twitter. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at info@movieology.tv. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Gary DeMar, who has graciously offered to provide today's review. Gary, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Gary is the president of American Vision and is the author of numerous worldview-related books, including Movies with Worldviews in Mind, which you can get for free in ebook form simply by signing up for Movieology's newsletter on our website at this link. Now, Gary, if you're ready, let's jump right into the review.
All right, thank you. When I first saw the trailer for the movie The Help, I thought it was a comedy. There were certain scenes in the trailer that gave the impression that this was going to be a comedic formulation of how black maids were telling stories about their employers, about funny things that they have done. But when I actually got to the movie theater and began to watch the movie, I began to see that this was a different type of movie. I also noticed something about the audience. Most of the people were of my age, very, very few teenagers. In fact, I don't think I saw a teenager in the movie theater. So I did a little background on the Help and found out that it was a novel that came out in 2009, and it was written by Catherine Stalker. She had gone to 60 publishers to try to get this book published. Not one of those 60 publishers ended up doing it. And I think I know the reason why. This particular film is about a white woman telling the stories of black maids in Jackson, Mississippi in the early 1960s, probably between 1962 and 1963. And I'm going to guess that a lot of the publishers thought, what does this white woman have to do with telling the stories of black maids and the oppression that they felt during the 1960s and the way that they were treated? Be that as it may, this was a tremendous book that came out, has sold 5 million copies, and it's a shame that these 60 publishers passed it up. The story has gone worldwide. Well, as usual, when something like this successful takes place, a movie is done. And I have to say that this was a very powerful movie, but my suspicions are a lot of people today have no idea how bad it was for blacks in the South in the 1960s. And the story surrounds maids who go literally across the tracks into the northern suburbs of Jackson, Mississippi, and housekeep. They cook the food, they do the laundry, and they raise the children of these white families. But the indignities that these women experience is horrifying, such an extent that they couldn't use the glasses and the utensils in the household. They had to have their own and put them in a special place. They couldn't use the bathrooms in the house. There's one particular scene in which one of the maids has to go to the bathroom. It's raining outside. She can't go outside, And so she basically has to hold it. And what they end up doing is building a bathroom outside for the help. Well, one young lady, Skeeter, who grew up in this environment and was raised by a black woman herself, comes back to Jackson, Mississippi, and begins to see the indignities face to face. She's a single woman who comes back to a time period in which her friends are married and have children. And she watches these maids and the things that they have to go through. And she's an aspiring writer and wants to tell the story of these women. But these women are afraid. They know that if they tell the story, not only could they lose their jobs, it's a good possibility they could lose their lives. But over a period of time, these women, with the indignities that they suffer and with the encouragement of Skeeter, and at one particular time in the film, minister in the church, citing Exodus chapter 4, verse 10, where Moses makes the excuse of being slow of speech, and he gets up and he says, "You have to tell the truth." He knows nothing about what's going on here, but Adeline is convicted by this passage. She finally goes to Skeeter and she says, "I want to talk." And as the movie goes on, the other maids want to talk as well. And they tell how they experience these horrifying, the way they're horrifyingly treated, and so forth. So what caught my attention with all this is so much has changed since the 1960s in the South. In fact, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I can tell you that there's still prejudice and racism when I was growing up as well. I never saw a black person until I was in the 7th grade. And I finally began to realize that blacks were hidden from most Northerners. They lived in the Hill District, as a section of downtown Pittsburgh. In my own neighborhood, there was a place called The Patch. This is where blacks and poor whites lived. They never would have walked through our neighborhood in those days. They never would have bought a house. In fact, if I go back there today and visit where I grew up, I have never seen a black person own a house in that area. So there was a great deal of segregation, a great deal of discrimination in the North, but people just didn't talk about it because they were pushed outside of our neighborhoods. In the South, however, blacks would come into the neighborhoods and do their work and then go back to their shacks literally across the tracks. But again, as I mentioned to you, lots of things have changed here in the South. Growing up, raising our children in neighborhoods today, it's amazing how many blacks are through integrated neighborhoods all over where we live here in the western part of Cobb County. And so this is a movie of cultural shifts. It's a movie of change of attitudes. It's really an overwhelming presentation of these types of attitudes. What impressed me about this movie was that in addition to telling a serious story, it still had a lot of comedic elements to it. The two black women who play the main characters here, while their oppression overwhelmed them, they still had time for levity. They still had time for the enjoyment of life. They were still hopeful of a better time and of a better era. I found that the church was not stereotypical of a black church. The gospel, while not preached directly, was certainly made effective about loving your enemies and speaking the truth and going out and doing your job as a Christian in the world. And at the same time, there was the hypocrisy that took place within the white community. Supposedly church-going Christians having these types of attitudes towards blacks. It was a very, very different time. In fact, I lived in Jackson, Mississippi for a number of years when I was in seminary. So this movie takes place in the 1960s. I was in Jackson, Mississippi from 1974 to 1979 with a year out in North Carolina. And I believe there were significant changes that had even taken place then. Now, I want to make the point here that a movie like this certainly has to be somewhat stereotypical and then enhancing these disparities among whites and blacks. Not all blacks, in fact, were oppressed like those in this particular movie, and not all whites were oppressors as they're depicted in this movie. That's just the nature of a movie like this. I left there really struck with the struggles that blacks have gone through in the United States today. And I have to say that one of the things I think has been detrimental to the black community today has been, after Kennedy's assassination in November of 1963, we had Lyndon Johnson coming up with the Great Society and instituting governmental programs that I think have been very detrimental to blacks today. That have not gotten as many of them out of poverty that would have happened if we didn't have the Great Society. So I would like to recommend this movie to go in there with a very open mind and to see a piece of history that I would say most young Americans are unaware of. One bit of caution, there is a theme that runs through this particular movie that I would say you have to be aware that it's going to take place. It is instrumental to the theme of the movie, and I won't say anything more about that. But just keep in mind that this is a movie for adults, and I hope it stirs you as much as it stirred me. I give The Help 3.5 stars. I thought the acting was excellent with the main characters. The two black women did an extraordinary job. I think Viola Davis should be up for an Academy Award. The young woman who played Skeeter, I thought, did a very good job as well. Some of the other actors, I thought their performances were a little thin. I thought the way the white women kind of acted at their socials, their bridge clubs and so forth was a little over the top. But I think that added to the comedic elements to this particular film. There were comedy among the blacks and the whites, and I thought it was fair to maybe depict both of them in the same way. So again, 3.5 stars in a movie that I thought was a great pull at the heartstrings, and it will make you think about how to treat other people and to see how far our nation has come in treating racial minorities.
Well, thank you, Gary, for your insight and your perspective. Don't forget to let us know your thoughts on this movie by emailing us at info@movieology.tv, or you can message us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Until next time, I'm Stuart Adams with Dr. Gary DeMar. Thank you for watching. Wasn't there a Muppet named Skeeter?
Yes.
Yeah, or a Muppet baby named Skeeter. Agreed to provide today's... Sorry, I kept talking through that. Set in Mississippi amongst all the mosquitoes.
Ever.
We didn't really provide Joe with many bloopers, so you have anything funny you'd like to say? That take was fun.
I might end up saying words that don't have anything to do with what.
I think it was the shortest.
And now I'm going to continue talking and pull out the... Stay tuned. Yes. Review. Next week, Spy Kids 4D with aromascope. Smells like money.